50 minutes till 9 o'clock. Food will be after, inshallah, Maghrib, right? But please listen to the program. And the speakers will be asking questions as well to make sure you guys are attentive. Inshallah, we'll all benefit from the program. Jazakallah khair. I would just request the speakers to introduce themselves. We have some special speakers from the other side of Toronto. They came all the way here. So we should really give attention and value to their time. Jazakallah khair.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. First of all, I just want to say thanks, a big jazakallah khair to the admin of Muslim Neighborhood Nexus. We were here a couple of months ago, and the topic of what is affecting families across the board came up. And I mentioned that myself and another brother, and Brother Qaisar, who's sitting on my right, will introduce himself. So I am an ex-retired physician, surgeon. I have practiced in the East End of Toronto for almost 25 years. But what has been more recently been my interest for the last 15 years is families. And the reason is because I think families are facing a unprecedented challenge. Not just the Muslim families, the family structure in general, where people are having difficulties with relationships, people are having difficulties with prioritization of things. People are also having potentially some difficulties with really when it comes to problems. What do you do? How do you deal with problems? Who do you go to? People go to masjid imams, people can go to a physician, people can go to a psychologist, people can go to all kinds of things. But there's some things, and I'll give you an example. You've heard of things where people, the generations had a major argument because the mother or the father took the internet box away. I'm sure you've all heard of them. There have been even violent incidents in the United States and here, which are related simply to something of that nature, which may not look like something very much. But in fact, the reality of it is, it's very big. And so Happy Strong Family, which myself and Brother Qaisar Ghalib, who's not here today, are a part of, is a social and educational organization, and that address specifically the issues that are related to the families. And when I spoke with Brother Faisal a few weeks ago, we went over what are the relevant topics, and I said digital distraction is one of those topics which I feel is affecting a lot of people, where you'll find people that are simply lost in the digital world to the extent where they have forgotten that they're a part of a family. And sometimes they are so much, if you like, disconnected that the parents feel. I just literally today, because I also have a summer camp running in the masjid where I am, one sister came close to tears. She said, "Brother, I don't know how to take my children out of what looks like this magic spell. They look like they are under a magic spell. They're mesmerized. I can't even talk to them. My son doesn't come down from his room because he's on the video games or he's on something else." She said something else which is more private about her daughter, but you get the point. I don't think I'm speaking to a crowd that doesn't know. And my concern is, what are we going to do about it? I don't just like pointing a problem. I also like to say, well, let's give our community some solutions. We send our children to maktab, okay, go and learn the Quran. Okay, let's go and learn the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Let's learn how we deal with challenges in the school. But there's very little adult education. I find adult education ought to address things that are affecting our communities. And I think that should be addressed in an easy to understand, commonsensical way with people. Brother Qaisar is going to introduce himself in a minute. Educationalists, people who are kind of in the field. I have been a civic activist for about 20 years, and I found consistently the same problems that come up, maybe in a different, if you like, trend, but ultimately the root problem is a lack of connection between the two generations. There just does not seem to be good communication. We haven't figured out what are our priorities. Our children look at us and say, my dad's away to work every day. When he comes home, he grabs his phone. My mom is busy all day, etc. So children learn your priorities and my priorities from what they see you do. You can give them the best talk in the world. You can give them statistics about how this and that is bad, but ultimately kids will learn from what me and you are doing, not from what me and you are saying. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Brother Qaiser and introduce himself. But inshallah, in the next 40 minutes, 35 minutes, we're going to try and make some sense of what we're dealing with and what we can do about it, because I think that is way more important. I think we all know the problem. I don't think I'm telling you something you don't know. I think you would like to hear some answers, and inshallah, we're hoping that we will offer you some answers. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu Didn't notice that, sorry. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So with the introduction from Dr. Rashid, just to let you all know that I'm very excited to be here, because putting this presentation together was more like I feel like I was doing it for myself first, because I have some things that I need to change in my life. And after looking at all of this, when I was putting it together to address the community, I thought, you know what, this is stuff that I should be doing as well. So to start with, my name is Qaiser Ahmed. I am currently a vice principal in a secondary school in Toronto. And with your du'as, inshallah, I will be a principal soon, one day leading my own school. And I've been in the public system. Basically, I started school when I was 4 years old, and I never left. So I was born here in Toronto, went to public schools all my life, university and so forth. And so when I've been in school teaching and as a guidance counselor and now as an administrator, there's a lot of things that I've learned along the way that I feel would be helpful for parents to understand. So the topic of today's session is balance in a digital age. And the two of us, Dr. Rashid and I, are going to be doing this session with all of you. It's sponsored by Happy Strong Family, and as you know, Dr. Rashid just spoke about the excellent work that he's doing with his organization here. So one of the things that when I was talking to my son, I have 3 kids. My second child was saying, Abu, just don't forget to tell everybody something. And I was like, what is that? He said, well, if you're talking about the balance, right, if the title is The Balance in a Digital Age, make sure you talk about the balance, meaning that there is actually a lot of positive tech benefits that all of us know about. So I'm not really going to focus on this, because all of us know of the benefits of having our smartphones, our internet, Wi-Fi. There's a lot of learning that can happen. The image that I have up there is of a course called Why Islam is True by Sheikh Hamza Karamali. It's a course that I recommend for everyone who is in high school or university, or going to university or college, any kind of post-secondary education. It's a must for students as well as parents to learn about, because he's talking about some very important things about understanding how do you know that Islam is true, and the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So from tech, we get a lot of benefits. You can listen to lectures, online courses, and so forth. You have AI, so I've got ChatGPT up there, and I'm sure all of you are aware of how to use ChatGPT. It's being used in schools, sometimes not in the best way. But the important thing about AI tools is that teaching our kids how to use it positively in a manner that will help them to learn. You use it for maps. I mean, when I was driving over here, because I'm all the way in the East End, I had my Google Maps on, and even though I know how to get here, all of you know that using Google Maps or Waze or whatever that it is you use, it helps you get here faster, right? It avoids all the traffic and so forth. Communication with loved ones overseas, like everything has become so much more easier, right? Before, when I was growing up, if I was contacting family overseas, it was a very expensive call. And our children actually probably have no idea what the phone looks like, because we had these, you had to dial it at one point, and then it became touch tone. We were like, oh, look at the technology, it's touch tone. But it was still very expensive, right? So now you've got it, everything is free. You have news that you're accessing online, you have streaming. So there's a lot of positive things to tech, and I'm sure there's many more. But we're not going to focus on that, because all of you know the positive things because you're using it. But one of the things that if we look at, there is actually a digital addiction that's taking place, right? So these stats are from the Pew Research Forum, if you're familiar with them, and some other ones. And there's some US stats. So one of the interesting things is that they did a study to find out how many people are actually online almost always. And they said 31% of adults have said they're reported being constantly online throughout the day. 40% of our youth, 18 to 22, feel dependent on social media platforms, like 40%. And when you're talking 40% of a million, that's a very large number, right? But we're not talking just a million, you're talking about millions, right? Teen smartphone access, it's at 95%. And so in my school, which is in schools across the city, you'll see that kids actually have access to their phones, but they're still coming to the office saying, is there any food to eat? Do you have any snacks for us? You've got Wi-Fi and smartphones, but there's an issue of food, right? And so this is stuff that all of you, I'm sure, are fully aware of, that the amount of access that people have. And you know the pressures and the pitfalls, right? There's a hidden addiction. They're saying approximately 27% of children who spend 3 hours or more online per day exhibit symptoms of poor mental health. That's a very high number. It's almost 1 in 4. It's just a little bit of, like, almost 27%. So 1 in 4 people approximately are experiencing some form of poor mental health symptoms. You have the cultural conflicts that Dr. Rashid was talking about, that, you know, some of the things that are happening in our homes contradict Islamic teachings. It's so obvious. If anybody says, I'm going to turn on my phone and try to avoid seeing certain things, it's almost impossible. You know it. As parents, you are fully aware of it. And the emotional impact is huge on kids. Does everybody know what FOMO is? FOMO? What is it? Sorry? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out, right. So whenever there is that fear that, oh my God, I missed something 5 minutes ago. Like what happened 5 minutes ago? What happened an hour ago? What happened yesterday? And that kind of, it's a sense of anxiety. I don't like to use that word loosely, but kids start to wonder, like, what happened? What did I miss? And that's why you'll see that the Ministry of Education in Ontario they're attempting to, well, they said they're banning cell phones in the classroom, but I'll tell you, that's a very hard thing to do, because nobody wants to put away their $2,000 cell phone and give it to a teacher at the front of the room because it could go missing, right? So working around that is a really big challenge, right? And you'll see that this FOMO kind of stuff really has an impact on youth, as well as adults, right? It's not just youth. So when I'm speaking to you and I'm saying youth, I still consider myself a youth. I'm sure Dr. Rashid does as well. So I'm just talking about generally for all of us, right? Does anybody know Islamically what is the age of youth from the Islamic perspective? What's the age that you're still considered a youth? Before 40? Did somebody say 50? MashaAllah, I wish it was 50. But it's about 40. You're still considered a youth up to the age of 40. But that's another conversation. You can ask your scholars about that. Streaming and media consumption. So there's a constant content. It's just you're seeing things over and over again. And that is just endless, right? And it's basically when you're looking at things that you get desensitized, right? I will tell you so honestly that I cannot look at what is happening to our brothers and sisters in Gaza. I can't look at that. I don't look at it anymore. It's too hard on me, right? So imagine for our youth who are seeing this constantly, who are seeing other things that are on, like there's a constant content that's going back and forth, and it's based on an algorithm, because people are really good at math, to design what kind of content is going to come to your phone, right? We know that by constantly looking at it, all this stuff on our phones is disrupting our sleep. Because we say, if I'm sleepy at night, okay, maybe I'll just take a look at what's on our phone, and then you kind of get lost in it. And I'll be honest, I do that too. I get lost in it as well. And my daughter, mashallah, she made me an Instagram account, which I really was not on social media. And when I started looking at the stuff, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, this is even more interesting. Oh my God, look what's happening here. Oh, look at this building stuff, how they're putting the molding together, on your house, and I didn't do it that way. Maybe I should have done it this way. And it just keeps on coming, nonstop. Some of that stuff is really good. Like I said, there's a lot of opportunities to learn, to do things, but some of the stuff as well is not so good, right? And that causes a sleep disruption. And how many of you, let's just be really honest, that you were viewing something late at night and you didn't wake up for Fajr? How many? That's me. I saw something, I couldn't sleep, and when you're looking at your phone, it's not allowing you to go to sleep, because you already know the brain studies will say that it takes about, Dr. Rashid can speak to that better than me.
Can I just interrupt for a minute to give Kaiser a break?
Yeah.
There is something called the melatonin cortisol cycle.
Yeah.
There is a hormonal imbalance that occurs from people that are stimulating the mind. Because you all know, I'm sure you do. If you don't, I'll just give you a quick, if you like, Physiology 101. There is what's called the sympathetic component in the body, which stimulates things. And there is the parasympathetic component, which calms things. Parasympathetic component comes on when you are, if you like, doing salah. It could do, unless you're so distracted. It can also come on by deep breathing. If you guys don't deep breathe, start deep breathing. You know, there's another reason. Our life is decided by what? What is the decision Allah Ta'ala has made to say, this is what will decide your life? Meaning, this is the number of things you will have. What is that? It's not years. It's not months either. It is the number of breaths you will take. That is the decision maker. Now think about somebody who's taking a lot of breathing because they're excited. You are actually using up the quota. So you've got to do calm, if you like, slow, almost meditate. If you think about things like yoga, I'm not recommending it. One of the things they do is this calm, prolonged breathing. So I want you all to think about it like this. Sympathetic whereas parasympathetic. So if you watch a movie, especially if you watch some bad news, your sympathetic system gave you a big dose. You know what you get injected? You get something called adrenaline. And when you take a deep breath and when you, for example, make dhikr, for example, if you just take a deep breath or you look at a calm, natural scene, your parasympathetics pump up and you actually calm down. This calms down the heart, it calms down the brain EEG, the waves that indicate stress. It also calms down the systems in the body that will allow you to utilize whatever Allah has given you better. So I just wanted to give that little insight into what Brother Qaiser is saying, that it is completely understandable physiologically that a person who watches a cell phone before they go to sleep, they are actually stimulating things that will allow them to not sleep. Because melatonin, this hormone that allows you to think it's nighttime, is disrupted by looking at blue light, which is what comes out of the phone or the computer. So anything like that, most times whatever studies I have read indicate you should not do your cell phone at least an hour before you go to sleep. Highly recommended. Do what is called really phasing down. Begin the phase. A lot of the time this sleep problem occurs, this is not the conversation topic, but it occurs because there's no routine. And the less routine you have, the more difficulty you have falling asleep. I'm going to let Qaiser continue.
So you'll know that there is a sleep disruption, and anybody who does stay awake watching a Marvel movie or whatever you're interested in, looking at your phones, if you sleep past a certain time and you don't fall asleep by a certain time, just repeating that by mistake, but you fall asleep a little too late, you miss your Fajr. And it's a natural thing because you're just going right through it. And so I know that you will know that there are some excuses, permissible excuses to miss Fajr, to miss your prayer. But I think if you're doing something intentionally, that doesn't become an excuse, right? So one of the things, if you were to sleep through your prayer, genuinely sleep through it, you're excused for that. You make your qada, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all merciful. But if you do something intentionally to keep yourself awake, and you know that's going to make it hard for you to wake up, then that's something you have to think about. There's also an academic impact, right? Because you'll see a lot of youth and adults who are studying, if they are, if you're on your phone, you start to like go to your phone in between your studying, and you lose the time you need to sort of absorb the material. And that's really important to ensure that, the distractions are kind of set aside. But the youth are really smart. They know how to balance their time. They know when to look at something and when not to. But sometimes that kind of breaks down a little bit because they get so interested in something else and you start to lose that time. And one of the things that also decreases is the religious learning. You know, okay, maybe I won't read like 2 pages of Quran tonight because I really have to watch this movie, or I really have to play this game, or I really have to do something, right? So stuff starts to go down a little bit. And that's really something that we have to think about. But there's some unique challenges for Muslim youth, right? And so let's look at it from values, right? So Muslim youth are navigating between Islamic teachings and mainstream digital culture, right? And so it's not hard to navigate because I had to do it. You're doing it right now as adults. The kids are doing it. But it becomes a challenge when those values sort of kind of conflict with what the Deen of Islam is teaching you, right? Because you start to see certain things, and you know, one of the things I got a little bit interested in was exercise. But then the images that come up in the is actually, you're like, what is going on here? I was just looking for how can I build a little bit muscle here because I have none, right? And so all of a sudden you just see these images of people of the opposite gender who are not dressed very well, and you're just like, you know, should I really be looking at this, right? There's peer pressure. So students are feeling compelled that they actually have to go online. They have to see what happened an hour ago in school because everything seems to be posted online. And they don't want that FOMO thing of fear of missing out. They don't want to miss anything. So there's this peer pressure because sometimes the youth will say, their friends will say, did you see what happened? Look what's posted. Look what she posted, or look what he posted, and you can't miss out, right? And that peer pressure then makes them want to do more, want to take a look at what else, like what do they miss? And you start to, it becomes a habit that I have to scroll and take a look, right? You have online Islamophobia, right? There's a lot of exposure to prejudice, stereotypes, racism, religious discrimination. People are pretending to be others, right? When it says identity struggles here, you know, maintaining Islamic identity while, you know, participating in these spaces, one of the very interesting things that we notice in school is that kids will take the identity of somebody else and make an account and start pretending they're them, saying some very negative things about somebody else. And then all of a sudden somebody will come to you and say, why did you say that about me? And you're like, what are you talking about? Right? Do any of the youth know what I'm talking about? Has anybody heard about, you know, people just taking their identity? Right? Sort of. You're aware of that. It happened with my daughter. Somebody came up to my daughter and said, why'd you say that to me? And she's like, what do you mean? Why? I didn't even know who you are. Right? And so you'll have people who will take different Instagram accounts, make their accounts on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, and start posting things on behalf of others. And that poses another problem because that's your identity. And the kids are struggling with it, and it makes it even more challenging. Just feel free to add in whenever.
I just wanted to add one small thing that we also have to remember that youth often don't have a, if you like, something to compare things with, to say, okay, my dad has spoken about this. My mom really links up with me and answers my questions. So the reason many times, I would say maybe not a huge number of times, but a percentage of our children really don't know what to turn to when they have a, if you like, something that's confusing. I'll give you an example. A young man said to me, is it wrong for sisters and brothers to talk to each other when there is no adults around? That's a very big question. But you know where it's coming from? He doesn't know who to ask. He's confused. He said, I notice when we go in the masjid, and your masjid is very different, that people don't allow any interaction at all. See, if you don't clarify this for youngsters, there is bound to be confusion, and that's when sometimes young people turn to sources that are not perhaps authentic, not even Islamic. But they are trying to figure out in their mind, what do I do? How do I deal with this confusion in my mind? And we are not creating enough. I mean, mashallah, hats off to your masjid for creating a platform. I hope, inshallah, you'll ask lots of questions. We do things like marriage workshop in our newly acquired Islamic Center, Bowmanville. We did a marriage workshop. I can't tell you the number of sisters that had questions about what they should do to get married. Nothing wrong with it. I'm not bringing this topic here in a big way, but I'm just saying, what other space do you expect people to ask these questions? Where do they go? They don't have their aunties, they don't have their uncles, they don't have their neighbors, they don't have their school friends, because we've dislodged ourselves from wherever we've come from and have started to live in a country where there is individualism is at its height. It's a me, myself and I society. And so if you have that situation and you have no answers for your children and your youngsters because they feel so alienated with the religious spaces, where do they go? What do they do? How do they deal with a question that's occurring in their hearts and they don't know? Or if I asked my dad or my mum, there would be an absolute third world war in the house. So that is what I think Kaiser is trying to say, that identity struggles becomes bigger because we are not supporting conversations because we are scared. One time I remember somebody said, Brother Rashid, if you bring this up, the Persians will think that you are actually talking about them. I said, Subhanallah. So we don't talk about ourselves as a community? We should. If we are having struggles with identity of who we are, what's wrong with talking about it? If our children don't see eye to eye with us when it comes to, for example, getting married, how are you going to resolve this problem until you bring it up in a conversation? What other situations do you have? So inshallah, continue, Kaiser, please.
Yeah. So there's some triggers and root causes that might be it might be part of the way some children are thinking, some youth are thinking, right? So some of the reasons that youth might turn to digital spaces is because there's a desire for belonging and acceptance. Like Dr. Rashid is saying, that maybe that communication at home is not there, so they're looking for another form of belonging and acceptance. Maybe they can have a conversation and escape the real world pressures that they're in and go into another world, another reality, and start thinking about having conversations that they would like to have. Maybe there's a curiosity about other cultural contexts, right? Or the entertainment alternatives seem to be very limited in certain areas, so they're saying, well, I'm just going to hop on my phone and see what else is available out there, like limited in the home. And there's also barriers to seeking help, right? So, I mean, Dr. Rashid just kind of mentioned this here. I'm just going to just say it because it's on the slide. But there's a stigma around addiction in Muslim communities. We already know that. There's a stigma around mental health. There's a stigma about addiction because it's just something that we feel that we can't talk about it. But as Dr. Rashid is saying, that in a space like this, there has to be an opportunity for people to speak and ask questions. There has to be mentorship opportunities for the youth especially. But I'm just going off on a tangent here. Parental digital literacy gaps. Maybe not all parents understand what's available online, although I suspect the majority do. Maybe there's a shame about online activities, right? There could be a fear of harsh judgment or punishment, right? So whenever there's all this kind of stuff that is on a child, on a youth, and they're just, you know what, like I just can't handle it. I'm just going to go to my room, lock the door, and nobody's going to bother me, and I'm just going to go into my own world. It's almost like that movie Ready Player One. Has anybody seen Ready Player One? Nobody seen Ready Player One? Look at here, I'm
How old is it?
Ready Player One. Yeah, it's I can't. I won't give it away. It's actually a very interesting movie. Apparently, somebody said the book was mandatory reading for people who were joining like Google and Facebook and all that kind of stuff because the author was really thinking way ahead of his time, and they made this really interesting movie about it. Not that I'm promoting you to watch movies in Miss Fudger. So screen time recommendations, just for you to think a little bit about this, is that with regards to brain development, because I've noticed that a lot of young kids have a phone, like very young. But they say the first 7 years are critical time for brain development. And excessive screen time can actually interfere with the development of attention span, problem-solving skills, and creativity. This is not new stuff, okay? But there's studies have been done. Dr. Rashid actually shared an article with me before we were coming here, and I was like, I looked at this about 20 years ago. And they were talking about this for quite some time. And by offering screen-free alternatives, it's actually a way to nurture healthy neural connections that support long-term growth, right? So every time, if I got this right, please correct me, whenever you learn something new, your brain is making these connections from right to left or left to right. It's constantly building capacity, if that's the right word.
Let me ask everybody, inshallah, you have a choice to not answer if you don't want to. Who has heard the term neuroplasticity? Okay, one brother has. What this means, my sisters and my brothers in Islam, you can change your brain.
Yeah.
You can change your brain. That's not a small statement, by the way. And this is not something that's been known for yonks. It's not. It's relatively new research. But if you, for example, say, I suffer from bad memory. I'll just give you an example. You have a memory issue, right? Stop using GPS. Stop using GPS. Your memory, now you might say, what's this got to do with it? Look, you and me have, everybody's heard the term use it or lose it? That's what this is. This is not rocket science. Whatever you're not using, you are losing it. Who has heard of the baby channel? One brother has. There is a 24-hour baby channel on now that will allow you to put your child or your little baby to basically be digitally distracted. The baby will not bother you. That's how powerful these things are. And the effect of this, I'll just give you one effect. There is now documented evidence that attention spans, meaning the ability to concentrate on what was just said. There is something called ROM. Everybody heard of it? ROM on the computer? Somebody say for me, what does that mean? Random access memory. Okay? So random access memory is what me and you are losing if you are allowing your child, particularly as Kaiser said, under 7 years age. There is a woman called Sue Palmer. You can look her up. She's a Scottish educationalist. She's written a book called Toxic Childhood. She's written another book called 21st Century Girls. Today, I was reading where she was suggesting solutions, and she was suggesting the solutions from nobody else than the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. I was amazed. It actually said, for the first 7 years, the Prophet ﷺ said, do not do anything except play with your kids. So when you and me put our kids into, oh, my child must learn the Quran, you are actually doing the exact opposite of what you should be doing. Quran learning, Hadith learning, learning Arabic, learning Deen, all fine. But the first 7 years, the Prophet ﷺ said, play with your kids. Play. Play is their learning. They learn coordination. They learn how to deal with disappointment. They learn things that they will not learn if you don't allow them those first 7 years to play. Second 7 years, you probably all know this, but I'll say it anyway, educate them. Become their teacher. And the third, which means after they're 14, now they're considered baligh, now they're considered young adults. Now become their friends. This is quoted by a Scottish educationalist who's not a Muslimah, who doesn't care about Muslims or Islam. But she found that so powerful, she said it aligns with everything that modern science and modern psychology and modern physiology has come up with. So I just wanted to mention, Qaisar to say the details, but I just want you all to remember, let us not ignore our Islamic tradition completely, because some of us become overwhelmed with the information around us, say, oh, but is it supported by science? Well, this is supported by science. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the American Academy of Pediatrics, so this is like a governing body of pediatricians in the US. They have recommendations as well, and what I'm saying, it's interesting because about 20 years ago, they said under the age of 24 months, there should be no screen time for kids, but now they're actually revised it and said under the age of 18 months, should avoid screen time except for video chatting, which is something new that like I said, when I was putting this presentation together, I was like a learning for me too. But except for video chatting, because that's where, you know, grandparents get to see their young ones and so forth. And this has all to do with brain development and learning, right? Children at the ages of 2 to 5, you know, they're saying limit screen time access to 1 hour per day and so forth. But if you think about it, as Dr. Rashid just said, what is the sunnah that we should be practicing and raising our children? And he already mentioned it. Because there's a school system called the Waldorf schools. Anybody heard of Waldorf schools? It's a private school system. Actually, it's very extraordinarily amazing. And it's not very well known to many. I just saw one hand go up. But their school system, they actually recommend to the parents of the kids that are coming in they say there's really no screen time. We don't want your kids to watch any, have screen time before the age of 7. Age of 7. If you go to, in the Scandinavian countries like Sweden, I don't think they start school until the kid is at the age of 7. It's actually very interesting, right? And the Waldorf approach is actually saying that, you know, let's hold off on the technology, let the kids develop their cognitive development. It has to build up through imagination, creativity, hands-on learning, and all that kind of fun stuff that, you know, people used to do not too long ago. It was actually when I was younger. But if you look at the saying is of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, he's the one who advised that play with them for the first 7 years, teach them for the next 7 years, and advise them for the next 7, right? And so this is really important stuff. So let's think about a couple of things. What would the Islamic approach be to overcoming a digital addiction, right? So here are some suggestions. You establish boundaries. You create tech-free zones in your homes that are inspired by an Islamic concept of a sacred space, okay? You think about where in your homes, for example, the dinner table. We're not going to have our phones on during dinner. We're just going to, you know, that would be, for example, a way to establish boundaries. Like during this time when we're all sitting together and eating, if you're able to do that, turn it off. Keep it out to the side. Who cares if it rings? Right? Obviously, unless you're looking for a job, but that's something very not going to happen all the time, right?
Or if you're on call as a surgeon, that way.
Or if you're on call, yeah, don't turn that off. That'd be pretty bad. Digital fasting. I'll talk about that in the next slide, okay? But digital fasting is where you practice regular digital fast, drawing upon the principles of Ramadan. Let's come to that in a minute. You use your prayer as an anchor. So one of the things a brother shared with me when I was in university, at University of Toronto, was that all of you, he said to us first-year Muslim students, he goes, make sure you structure your time around the salah. So whenever you need to take a break, you know, make sure you study until Dhuhr, take your break, go have your lunch, do whatever you know, play your games or whatever, come back and study again, use Asr as a time. So make some time, use your salah as a way to structure your time. And then seeking knowledge, right? You have to read, you have to listen, you have to reflect, and you have to apply. You know, you tap into the imams at this masjid and say, we need you to teach us a course, teach us a lesson, teach us some fiqh, legal rulings, teach us aqidah, like belief, the tenets of faith. But do something to uplift yourself, right? Because that'll help people overcome using their phones. Because you have to provide an alternative, and it has to be interesting. So what is digital fasting? One of the things you have to know that overstimulation of the brain, it kills motivation, it kills discipline, it weakens your ability to focus, it drains your drive for meaningful work because you're just not there. Your mind is somewhere else because you're distracted, right? And Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's a neuroscientist at Stanford University, I just took this quote. It was actually so amazing. SubhanAllah, if you think about it, everybody knows their phone is listening to them, right? And when I was putting this presentation together, I was just talking, and then all of a sudden something comes up on Instagram related to digital fasting. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, and I actually put that in, right? I was like, this is amazing, right? Maybe it's a blessing for for me and for you. I said me first because I need to learn it first. But this is amazing where he's saying if you constantly pursue dopamine highs, which is what is the overstimulation, your brain is releasing dopamine to give you a certain high, right? You reduce your ability to enjoy anything at all because all of a sudden everything else becomes boring. Ask a student who is in a classroom when they're not using technology if they're able to pay attention. They're going to say it's boring, right? But just wait till they hit university or college. There's not all these games and stuff going on. It's actually very lecture format.
Just a small thing to add there, Dr. Sue Palmer also said something very powerful. She said, when you don't allow children to experiment with play, right? Because that's what she's calling it now. She said, you are confining them. So many of us have become almost paranoid about safety. We don't want them to be hurt. We don't want them to be... What do you think that does to them in 5 years, 7 years' time? They're even scared to go up a little ramp because they think, hey, it's not safe. This is not something that is going to give rise to a self-esteemed person. You know the Prophet ﷺ, I was reading that when Fatima radiallahu anha used to come into the masjid, or wherever the Prophet ﷺ is giving his talk, he would get up, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he would kiss her on the forehead and he would let her sit where he was sitting. Now you imagine for a minute what that does for a little girl. How she thinks of what her importance is in the community, in her father's life, and in the, if you like, the environment in general. On the other hand, now compare it to the modern, if you like, parents who are so obsessed with things to say, oh, but you can't do this. Oh, but you cannot do this. And then there are others who sadly, I have seen, and Allah forgive me, there are people who I have seen, they give a phone as a replacement for their presence. And there's a very famous statement that I read many years ago. He said, don't replace your presence with your presence. Think carefully what I just said. Do not replace your presence with your presence. Your children will not remember the gadgets you gave them. They will remember the time you didn't spend with them. And there is something else that develops. We have seen a disaster in the Muslim community, just like it's happening all over. We are having difficulty with husband-wife relationships. I don't know about your community. This is what we are saying. 50 to 60% people cannot survive a marriage after 2 years. 50 to 60% people are unhappy in their marriage within 2 years. 50 to 60% of people never want to, and these are not light statistics. This is a very big disaster unfolding in the community. I was saying to Brother Faisal, if you allow us, we will actually unfold this all for you. It's a very unpleasant situation. But like I said right at the beginning, by the way, you can smile. Smiling is sunnah. It's okay. We're not discussing Qiyamah yet. We're not discussing the day of judgment. Inshallah, we'll come to that. But one brother said, I remember, I read him when I was in one of the khutbahs. I said, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مِّنْهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ شَأْنٌ يُغْنِيهِ. Brief answer. On that day, you will not recognize your children and they will not recognize you. This man said to me, uncle, brother, I don't know what will happen on the day of judgment. My kids don't even recognize me here. It says a very strong thing. I'm sorry it sounds like a tirade, but I want you to realize how serious the problem is. It's not going to go away just by worrying, by finding solutions.
Yeah, and you know what, I was just smiling when he was talking about the marriage thing because I remember when they were advertising a marriage session, I think it was a year ago, and we're in a chat, Dr. Rashid and a few others, and I said, look, the answer is really simple. Just tell the brothers who are married that 99% of the time it's your fault when there's an argument with your wife, so just apologize. It's always the guy's fault. And so, and I can see the sisters are like, you're right. But the thing is, when I say that, it's because whoever actually apologizes first, there's actually a great reward for that. So why not be the one who earns the reward in the hereafter? And inshallah, you get the reward in this fight. But anyway, let's get back to this part here. We're almost done. And then we'll open up for some questions just before Maghrib. So Dr. Huberman actually talks in this message that came up because my phone was listening to me about recalibration, not a detox. Because you can't get away from, as much as we're going to say, I'm going to get rid of this, you can't. This is a part of your lifestyle now, and it's almost impossible to live without it, right? So he's suggesting something very interesting, and I thought I included here, and I just modified it just a little bit. So once a week, there should be a 24-hour recalibration that you can do in 4 steps. First thing is eliminate any high dopamine inputs, meaning social media, Netflix, YouTube, sugary snacks and junk food, music with lyrics. If you're listening to that stuff, just put all of your electronics away for 24 hours. He's saying embrace simplicity and boredom. It's okay to get bored, right? And maybe go for a walk, enjoy nature, but don't take your phone with you, don't listen to any music, don't do anything that's related to a device. Just go out and see the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the beauty that He's made for all of us to see, right? You can even do household chores without any music. Just do something where you're disconnected. Do something that with no instant reward. So read a book, exercise without music. I think every single one of us should make a intention to exercise as much as we can. Like we'll start exercising to sort of improve our physical health. because that'll go a long way for both male and female. You could write, journal writing, learn a skill. You know, I'm looking at these things about how to make things out of wood or whatever. Like, do something different without the devices. You're going to say, well, you just said you're learning it on the phone. Well, you put the phone away and try to remember what you learned, right? Build that memory that we seem to be losing. And also reward internal states. Read the Quran. Learn about your deen. Find a scholar who will teach you, right? Do some dhikr, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have a set wird. Do you know what a wird is? Does anybody know what a wird is? What's a wird? Anybody? Just dhikr, something that you recite every day on a daily basis, but you can always add to it, right? Imam Haddad has a beautiful wird if you're interested in looking for one. But just do something. And then the breathing techniques that Dr. Rashid spoke about. While you're doing that, reconnect with breathing. You know, if anyone is into track and field and you're running those 400 meters and stuff, you'll know that your coach will say that in order for you to run that long distance fast, you have to control your breathing. It's very deep, long breaths while you're running, right? So you got to do it properly. So it's just a detox once a week that we say, okay, for 24 hours, I am not going to touch my device or any device, no TV, no nothing, and just see how it feels, right? And he's saying it's a recalibration of your brain, that your dopamine levels are always so high because you're so stimulated all the time that it gives your brain a chance to kind of bring that level down so you start to feel a little different and relaxed and, you know, in certain ways.
There's one small thing I want to add. Please. The evidence for disease prevention is very big. Yeah. Heart disease, high blood pressure, even cancer. These things are higher when people are not, if you like, doing things that cut down their sympathetic input. It may sound very weird, but it actually is very simple. High blood pressure simply is high sympathetics. Diabetes is high sympathetics. You are stimulating and not allowing the body to recover. Stimulation is needed, but you are not allowing, if you like, that recovery mode. Sleeping is actually one of the best things we do, provided we sleep restfully. Everybody's heard of restful sleep. I'm sure you have. There is disturbed sleep, but there is restful sleep. There is continuous sleep. There is uncontinuous sleep. There is sleep sometimes at this time and sometimes at that, and the cycle goes on. My point is very simple. If you're disrupting the body's physiology in a big way, it's not rocket science to figure out that the body will develop illnesses which were completely preventable. Dakala.
And so the role of parents and community, we're going to end in like 1 minute. We have till 8:55, so we got a minute and a half. It's just something for parents to think about, okay? There must be open dialogue, as Dr. Rashid was saying. There has to be a level of open communication between your parents and their kids. They should be able to ask you anything and everything, and you should not be able to shy away from any of that. And I'm sure none of you do. I'm sure you have that open communication with your children, and you allow for those conversations and questions to nurture in your homes. We as parents have to model good behavior, right? So if you're telling your son or your daughter like it's time to cut access to your phone, you're going to have to do it as well. It can't just be that you're telling them not to use it, but then all of a sudden, oh well, I've got to communicate with somebody overseas or whatever. Or if you're telling your child not to smoke and you're smoking yourself, like that's a very big contradiction, right? So we have to remove the contradictions and model good behavior. There's a community engagement, just like we're doing right now, you know, strengthen in-person activities at your masjid, and make the time for self-reflection. Encourage, you know, tazkiyah, self-purification through any kind of things you can to sort of disconnect, right? And do your best. Remember, I start off by saying that there's a lot of positive things on your phones that are very useful, very helpful for your day-to-day lives, to help you with your du'as, your deen, and so forth. But there's got to be a time where you've got to sort of pull it back and say, you know, it can't be taking over all my time. We're just going to end here, and we'll go to
just want to thank everybody. Yeah. You guys are very patient, very nice, very patient crowd. I really want to thank Brother Faisal and the administration for allowing us to present. This really is the tip of the iceberg, by the way. You're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. This is not by any means a heavy-duty workshop. This is just what I call it's a starter.
I hope you guys have all enjoyed it. I hope this stimulates more conversation. I hope you guys can, inshallah, speak to more qualified people than myself and Brother Qaisar. But we really just wanted to thank all of you and want to obviously thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us this opportunity. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Jazakallah khair.
Does anyone any questions?